Next paper is title is Reflections on. Okay, thanks. I was reading from another window and now
sorry,
the Zoom went full screen, but the information is the same, so not a problem. Reflections on the misuses of ORCID IDs. Okay, by Miriam, Baglioni, Andrea Mannocci, Paolo Manghi, Claudio Atzori, Alessia Bardi, and Sandro Bruzzo. And the talk will be given by Andrea Mannocci. So please, Andrea, the screen is yours. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So hello, everybody. I'm a researcher at EastCNR, and today we are talking about this collection of misuses in ORCID IDs that we encountered. So I will provide some context and then move to the main section about ORCID misuses, where we will deal both with ORCID misuses as a registry and from clients. I will explain later what is that. And then I'll wrap up and conclude with few suggestions. So a precise and reliable identification of researchers and individuals that are involved in research has manifold applications, and you name it, like impact assessment, research evaluation, collaboration networks, and so on. So since 2012, ORCID has been running a worldwide registry that means alphanumeric IDs, such as the one on the up here on the slide, which is my ORCID ID, and maintains a set of core relevance information about the registrants, namely ORCID profiles. It is renowned to be the primary means of identification of researchers. However, it has some undeniable issues. And for example, like 73.5% of the ORCID profiles that are live now does not have curated work section. So there's no information about papers, let's say. And these are official stats. It's not something that we computed. This graph here shows how the two trends are diverging. Like the blue one is the ORCID profiles and the other one is the curated ones. In a nutshell, the ORCID architecture can be seen as a bipartite, in a bipartite way. There are on one side users that interact directly with ORCID, curating their profiles, registering, and so on. And on the other side, there's indirect usage of ORCID from clients. So users that interact with refer to ORCID when they deposit metadata of research artifacts. And it's clear that somewhere along the way, there's something nasty happening. So in this research, we report a qualitative study that reflects our direct experience in working with ORCID data. And especially, we provide a collection of issues and anomalies that we observed while still in the OpenR research graph. OpenR does a lot of things, very complicated, but in a nutshell, we can say that it aggregates from over 10,000 sources, metadata of all kinds, put everything together and runs also inference and deduplication of entities. And this will become handy later. So ORCID misuses as a registry, fake ORCID profile. So a fake ORCID profile is whenever it has nothing to share with academia or research, and whose existence in the registry has the sole purpose of spamming and clickbaiting. And for example, if you search for Bitcoin, you end up with over 1,500 results that do not have anything to do with research whatsoever. If there is another account, it's called Other WhatsApp, that's the name. There are no research results shared and a bunch of links to social media platforms and so on to get clickbait. And just if you ask it, yes, there's also this guy. Poor quality ORCID profiles is another problem that we encountered. And as many ORCID IDs do not have a satisfactory grade of information completeness. And this is partially because ORCID requires only a name and a valid email upon registration, and family names are optional. So if you search, for example, Andrea, you will start finding surnames after about 250 ORCID profiles. So the first one, just like they are equally ambiguous because they don't have any surname nor other information. So unless you go in and you start checking what's inside, you can't tell people apart. Overly identified authors, we are able to detect these as a combination of two things. Like, for some unknown reasons, a physical person, an individual, has multiple ORCID IDs, so it registered multiple profiles, and they are using, this person is using all the IDs they might have interchangeably, which means that the researcher writes a paper, then it gets deposited into different repositories, perhaps, and in place A, he used the green ID, and in place B, the brownish one, and then opener comes, the duplication puts everything together, and then in the merged representative that combines all the views on the same artifact, the same research artifacts, these ORCID IDs are collected, they are gathered together, and we can understand that there is an issue because the same person has multiple IDs. And this is an example, like this Mohammed Shahzad has two profiles, and you can tell by looking at the works and the other information that it's indeed the same person, but is using consistently both when he's registering metadata about his own publication. Another problem is about stale ORCID profiles. And this is because, I mean, as researchers, we do the same thing over and over again. It is time consuming. We register the same metadata in multiple platforms. And there's no mechanism that encourages or enforces us to keep the information in our ORCID profiles as fresh as possible. And most of us, including myself, before writing this paper, we rely on automatic imports from cross-reference corpus and all the other applications that automatically interface with ORCID. And so you end up in cases like these where an author is correctly linked from the splash screen of the research paper, and then when you end up in the ORCID profile, in the relevant ORCID profile, there's no information available. About ORCID misuse instead from clients now. There are two main problems. One is typos. So it's about typos like ORCID IDs might be invalid or well-formed and yet non-resolving. And another problem regards the misinterpretation, because people might provide emails or other fancy author ID schemes when registering metadata of research artifacts. And what happens, for example, is that you find authors which have syntactically wrong ORCID IDs, like this one, which missed the last digit because it's 4 groups of 4 digits, or the last character could be an X, but this one clearly missed 1 digit at the end. Or you can find provided ORCID which do not resolve in ORCID itself. So this one, if you try to search it on ORCID, it doesn't fire a match. And the last problem is about wrong attribution. So this can happen when, by mistake, probably manual, ORCID IDs are provided with some errors. Like, one thing we found is that there might be external attributions, meaning that the ORCID that's provided upon registration time is of someone that's not even relevant to the research at hand. And the other problem is when ORCID IDs are shuffled among co-authors. And this paper here is a representative for both. The third author as the ORCID of the first one, while the last author as an ORCID of a guy that doesn't have to do anything with this. And so moving to discussion part, what can be done to move forward and get better from the current situation? So we suggest that probably institutions should take over control and act as identity providers themselves. And this is because probably the single sign-on mechanism that's actually implemented on ORCID, it's probably a mess, because you might register via email, then you forget you have registered via email, then you access via Google or Facebook, and you actually create a second ORCID ID. This, of course, has problems with freelance or independent researchers because they do not have anyone that can proxy their identity, and this should be taken care of, but it would be still a step forward and would reduce quantity of fake profiles. Regarding quality, ORCID should actually ask for surnames. It would be much better in terms of in solving ambiguity, and it should allow also certain alphabets, certain card sets in some fields only, because sometimes you look for name and surnames and you find all sorts of alphabets, and these, of course, it introduces confusion because you never know where to look, which fields you should look in order to tell people apart. Performing an email domain check on all the registrants and ask for the user action when in doubt, or for a third-party endorsement, would be advisable as well, because it would, like help cleansing all the account of the user or the ORCID profiles that are not relevant. And also, like the use of machine learning and AI techniques could be employed, so to tell legit ORCID IDs apart from the questionable ones. And so, like, as a reminder here, I'm just saying that ORCID IDs cannot be deleted ever because they are PIDs. So even if you spot out 100% that something is it's fake, like the one we have seen before, you can't delete it. It needs to stay there for forever, but you can deactivate ORCID can deactivate the account. In order to mitigate instead the client misuse of ORCID, the manual curation should be avoided as much as possible, manual insertion, because of course, like, people can make mistakes like copy paste or typos and so on. And also ORCID lookups should be automated as much as possible, so that whenever someone is depositing metadata about research artifacts, ORCID is queried in real time, so to cross-check that information is indeed consistent. For example, let's see whether the name and surnames is corresponding or not, and see if the ORCID ID is resolving or instead is syntactically wrong. So concluding, we stress the importance on stable and reliable author identification. We had an overview of a collection of ORCID misuses that we experienced while distilling the open research graph. And we provided a set of suitable recommendations, so to solve or at least mitigate such problems. In the future, we would like to extend these qualitative analysis, so to quantify the occurrence of each one of the issues that we identified now. And we would like to explore the viability of a machine learning solution, so to mitigate these problems. And yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No question. I have a question. So from your analysis, it seems that the ORCID attempt is actually a failure. And your solutions seems to me envisioning a completely different, basically, approach, rather than saving what one can save from ORCID. So in your opinion, is it sensible, does it make sense to try and saving this ORCID overall and turn it into a stable, reliable source, or we should go for a completely different approach, which is based on your conclusions?
No, I mean, in our study, we don't suggest to reinvent the wheel. There is an infrastructure.
This is a square wheel, it seems. So
well, yeah,
perhaps it's better to reinvent it.
Yeah, you can smooth out the corners and the edges. And so, I mean, the infrastructure is in place and all the bits and bobs are already there. So I think that starting from square one, with a new one, with a new solution, would be an overkill. I think it would be much better to use the present tools we have, and to which people are partially already accustomed, so to sort out the same problem. I have the feeling that ORCID is actually trying to do towards this direction. Like they recently published a procedure to merge, to claim different ORCID profiles. So like if you realize that you registered twice or three times and so on, then you can say, oh yeah, that's my bad, and I want all this information to actually be connected by a same as. Of course, they will not delete all the multiple IDs, but they will have a kind of same as equivalence. So you still can use them all. And so I think they are doing, they are working towards this direction, and yeah,
okay.
it's.
I understand.
Yeah.
I was just wondering whether having about 90% wrong information makes it easier to start from scratch, maybe reusing the same platform if it's already in place. Anyway, thank you very much. And